Where do I start with this? Well, first things first, I just want you to know up front, I got my fun facts ready. Well, they're not really fun facts. These are cold hard facts, and they're sad facts if you're an Alabama fan. If you were to Google who is the most hated man in the state of Alabama, I'm about, not 100%, but I'm about 98% sure a picture of Bob would show up. If you don't know who Bob is, that is Bill O'Brien. It actually really fascinates me because Bill O'Brien hasn't been in Alabama that long. He's only been there a couple of years, and he's already the most hated man in the state. I've never personally witnessed something quite like this, and when I say that Alabama people and Alabama fans, they hate Bill O'Brien, I'm not trolling, I'm being dead serious. Go to Twitter if you think I'm joking around. People don't just say, man, I hate Bill O'Brien after one game. After every single Alabama game, people go to Twitter to express how much they hate him. It doesn't matter if Alabama scores 50 points, they're going to talk about how bad his play calling is at times. All throughout the season, what have I continued to emphasize and harp on the channel? Hey, Bama fans, maybe Bill O'Brien isn't that bad. Maybe it's your player's fault. I said it before and I'm going to say it again. Many years ago, Nick Saban stated this and it resonated with me. Having a good play call, it is important, it is vital, but at the very end of the day, it's about execution. You can draw up the best play in the world, but if your players don't execute, it doesn't matter and it makes your defensive coordinator or offensive coordinator look bad. I say that to say this. Out of all the Bama fans in this world, out of all the people that analyze this stuff, even the ESPN announcers, I am probably the person who has single-handedly taken up for Bill O'Brien and Pete Golden. Well, not really Pete Golden, but Bill O'Brien the most. Don't get it twisted. I haven't stated that Bill O'Brien is doing a great job, but I said, hey, maybe it's our players. Maybe everyone else is catching up to us. However, with that being said, I'm starting to feel like it's time to move on. I'm going to reiterate this. I don't think Bill O'Brien's done a bad job. He's done an average job. And in most places, that'd be okay. But Alabama isn't most places. You got to do a great job. And apparently, according to all the sources going around, Bill O'Brien's getting fired. It's actually been stated by a very reliable source that Pete Golden, which is the defensive coordinator, and Bill O'Brien are going to be fired. Changes are coming soon. It's not a if, it's a when. We're going to talk all about that in tonight's video, the latest update on Bill O'Brien, but also, we got to talk about Mississippi State's head coach, Mike Leach. He did one of the craziest, but also one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I'm excited to get into tonight's video. Hope you guys are excited as well. All right, man, blah, blah, blah. Shut the crap up. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. That was weak. Let's get into it. That's better. So first things first, this got lost in the mix of things with everything going on Saturday because most people was tuning into the Alabama-LSU game, Georgia-Tennessee game. Well, Mike Leach, during his game against Auburn, he folded up the wide receivers' chairs and threw them on the ground because he said his wide receivers don't deserve to sit. You can't make this stuff up. If you don't know anything about Mike Leach, you would think he's crazy, but no, this is just how he is. I love this guy for this one simple reason. I don't really care for him as a coach, but he is one of the last truest people out there. He doesn't care about anybody's opinion. He's going to do what he wants. He's not trying to impress anybody. He doesn't care about getting quote-unquote canceled. He just says it how it is. There was even a time earlier, I think it was a week or two ago, where he said his wide receivers suck and they can't catch. I want y'all to think about that. Kirby Smart's wide receivers at Georgia, or Nick Saban's wide receivers, or Lane Kiffin's wide receivers, they could drop every single pass and they still wouldn't say that. I like this and I'll explain why. When I was a freshman in high school, I was starting for my varsity basketball team. Just like any freshman out there that starts for a varsity team, whether that's in football, basketball, baseball, or whatever, you kind of get a little bit of an ego. You know what I'm talking about. I wasn't an a-hole, but I was feeling good about myself. I was very confident. My head coach at the time was like 70-something years old. He was one of those old school guys from the rough days. He was the type of coach to throw a chair on the middle of the floor if the ref made a bad call. That's how bad it was. I bring that up to say this. There was multiple times throughout the season he would do stuff just like Mike Leach, and I liked him and I respected the man. I have thousands of stories I could tell you of what he did, but I'll leave it at this. We need more people like Mike Leach in this country. I'm going to leave it at that, but also check out what Brian Kelly had to say about beating Alabama this morning. When I say this morning, I'm referring to Tuesday. Somebody asked Brian Kelly if beating Alabama was the biggest win of his career, and here's what he said. No, the biggest win of my career is going to be when we win a national championship. What about that? LSU, you got one of, if not the best hires in the offseason. I just think Brian Kelly is going to continue to do a fantastic job there. I did want to share those two minor topics with y'all. Let me know your thoughts on that. But now finally, the main topic, the main encore, the main reason you clicked onto this video, Bill O'Brien, aka Bob, getting fired. Where do I start with this? Well, First things first, I just want you to know up front, I got my fun facts ready. Well, they're not really fun facts. These are cold hard facts, and they're sad facts if you're an Alabama fan. I also want to make this very, and I mean very clear, I'm still not going to bash Bill O'Brien or Pete Golden. So if you're expecting me to do that, you came to the wrong place. I've said it all year long. I said it last year, and I will continue to say this until they change. Alabama fans are some of the most entitled and spoiled people on this planet. I can't stand them sometimes, but that is a different conversation for a different day. These quote-unquote Alabama fans, and the reason I say quote-unquote is because they're fake fans. They're not true fans like me and you, and 95% of the people watching this channel, they don't live in reality. You know where I live? Reality. And the saddest of realities is, hey, Bama fans, is it really Bill O'Brien's fault? Is it really Pete Golden's fault that on 3rd and 7, you had a middle linebacker in perfect position to make a almost game-clinching tackle, and he can't tackle a guy? Bama fans, is it really Bill O'Brien's fault that your field goal kicker missed a game-winning field goal at Tennessee? Alabama fans, is it really Pete Golden's fault that LSU just had a great play call at the end of the game? No. The reality is that Bill O'Brien and Pete Golden, they're not playing on the field. Let me give you a great example. I'm sure there's at least 40 to 50% of you watching this video where your high school football team or your high school basketball team straight up sucks. I know it's true, but also let me ask you a question. Does it really matter what play call the head coach or offensive coordinator makes? No, it's still not going to be a good play because the players suck. Your local high school football team is 1-9 and 2-8 because of the players, not the coaches. Nick Saban could go to your local high school football team and he's still not going to have a winning record. I can promise you that. So to all my Alabama fans, let me make this clear. I'm not necessarily a fan of Pete Golden and I'm not necessarily a fan of Bill O'Brien. I most definitely think we've had far better offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators than these two guys. But, and I have a big but, you better trust me on that one, I don't think they've done a terrible job. I think they've done an okay job. Sometimes they've done good jobs and sometimes, not so good. I also will say this, Bill O'Brien does have some of the stupidest play calls I've ever seen. For example, one that sticks out the most to me is at Arkansas. We're up 28-23 with a backup quarterback in who cannot pass to save his life. It's 1st and goal on the 1 and he calls a slant. And it almost gets picked off. If you're a Bama fan, you know what I'm talking about. If you watch that game, that could have been disaster. I just simply don't understand it sometimes. To say it mind boggles me would be an understatement. Bill O'Brien will call a good game or a great game for 96 out of 100 plays. But that's the problem. The other 4 plays are so bad, that's why it gets so much hate. Another example, against Tennessee, there was no reason why Tennessee should have had time left to even have a chance to kick the game-winning field goal. We should have ran the clock out when we had the ball. I'm not going to dive into all that, but even I was saying that watching the game live. I was like, yo, why are we not running the ball in 1st and 10 with Jahmyr Gibbs? We was already in field goal range, but I'm not going to get into all that. Here's another thing I want to address. Fun fact for you. Alabama ranks 3rd in FBS in yards per carry, but number 88. Yes, 88 in rushing attempts per game. That doesn't make sense. We should be running the ball more. It's plain and simple. And also, check out this stat. Alabama is 2nd nationally in yards per carry and only 44th in yards per attempt. This is the eye-popping part to me. After Alabama's opening scripted drive versus LSU where we moved the ball up the field, for the rest of the first half, they called 22 passes and just 5 runs. You know what I think that is? It's Bill O'Brien being used to the NFL, where it's a passing league. This is the way I see it. Let me know your thoughts down below. It almost seems like Bill O'Brien thinks he's still in the NFL. He's calling it like an NFL game when it's not. This is college. In the NFL, yes, you got to pass it on almost every single play because you're not going to run the ball 40 times a game and win, or even 30 times a game. But in college, there is skill gaps. A lot of times, Alabama, if you just line up and run the ball almost every single time, you're going to win the game. That's how good and great Alabama is. I do feel like Bill O'Brien, he sometimes forgets that. It doesn't seem like he's going to be there for too much longer because many people think he's going to be fired at the end of this year. Here's what Josh Pate, who is a reliable source on 24/7 Sports, had to say. I don't really recognize Alabama right now. I think a lot of the fan base feels the same way. Everybody who has observed the program over the years feels the same way. I think the head coach there feels the same way. You may not believe that, but unlike you, he can't just bail in the middle of the year. Unlike you, he can't run to the nearest message board and fire half of his staff in the middle of the year. It's coming. A lot of changes are coming there. I don't expect either of their coordinators to be back next year. Okay. What do you think about that? I know my Bama fans are happy to hear that news. Whoa. Hold on. Here's where it gets more interesting. He also stated, I can 100% guarantee you staff changes are coming here. 100%. They can't come before the end of the season. Anybody wanting heads to roll on Monday morning, that's not the way it works, guys. You know that, but I can guarantee you moves are coming. Several moves are coming. There will be a dump button hit on a lot of this Alabama staff. The reason I know that, and the reason you can tell, is it's publicly available. I know what you're sitting there saying, yo, Matt, what does he mean by it's publicly available? How do you find that out? Yes, I do understand these quotes are kind of long, but they're very important, and here's the last and final one, probably the most important one. I would suggest you go back and watch Nick Saban's post-game press conference on Saturday because he did something that I thought was very telling. Even after he talked about how poorly they played, he talked about how much the team is underachieved. Those are my words. I'm paraphrasing him. He made sure to mention that I appreciate the team playing hard. I like this team. What he was doing, in my not so humble opinion, is he was telegraphing to everyone they failed the team, and by they, Pete Golden and Bill O'Brien. Whew. That's interesting. Let me know your thoughts on that as well. It's difficult because I always try to say this and remind people the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Just because you fire Pete Golden, just because you fire Bill O'Brien, it doesn't mean you're going to find somebody better, and I think 98% of people fail to realize that. But, and I have a big but, you guys know this, it probably is time to move on. And more than likely, Nick Saban will and can find somebody better than these two bozos. I still can't rationalize why everybody's pointing to Bill O'Brien because the biggest problem is the defense. Defense has got to be fixed, but it seems like the offense needs to be fixed as well. The play calling has been wishy-washy at times this year, and everybody with two eyes can see that. I myself would say there's probably a 99.6% chance Bill O'Brien gets fired at the end of the season. I'm very curious though. Let me know your thoughts down below. But